Hey, I want to talk to you today about legacy planning and building a generational financial freedom. Now, you might wonder why I'm passionate about this. And the bottom line is my number one rule is live like you're going to die tomorrow and plan like you're going to live forever. Because you see, you just might. Now, whether you have a business, whether your own personal finances, whatever it may be, the first question I would have for you is what legal document do you have in place today to make sure that what you want to have happen in your death is going to happen, not just what you hope is going to happen? Do you have that covered? Do you have it covered for your business? Do you have it covered for you personally? Now, we're going to talk about legacy planning, then we've got to talk about the game that we're playing. We're playing a game, and it's called accumulation. And we're over here, we're trying to put together as much money as we possibly can so that when we arrive over in this distribution phase, or my world, that we have enough money to make sure that we're able to live the lifestyle that we've become accustomed to, adjusted for taxes and inflation, out beyond yours and your spouse's life expectancy, and then pass your money on in the most tax-favored way possible. So what does retirement mean to you? All right. You see, if you were to look that word up in Webster's dictionary, it would tell you to be put out of use, to put out to pasture. I don't think that's really what I want to be done. I don't want to be put out to pasture. So what I recommend is that you don't retire, you redesign. But in the process of redesigning that, you've got to make sure that in order to retire, what you really need is you need a paycheck. And you see, you're going to have known income, Social Security, pension if you're lucky enough to have one. And then we could argue that rental income or maybe even your business. But then you're going to have a need, and in between there's going to be a gap, and that's going to be filled by those other assets. The question comes, will you have enough money? Will you be able to get those other assets to create that income stream that you need? And how long will your retirement last? But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about legacy planning, okay? So if legacy planning is to live the lifestyle you've become accustomed to, adjusted for taxes and inflation out beyond yours and your spouse's life expectancy, and then pass your money on in the most tax-favorable way possible, then you've really got to have a plan to do that, because you see, folks, that doesn't happen by accident. You need to first figure out where you are. You need to figure out, how is your money growing? Is it growing in a tax environment, tax-deferred environment, tax-free environment? Have you put the protections in place to make sure that what you want to happen in death is what is going to happen, and you're not just leaving that out to chance? Now, one of these documents that you could have in place would be a living trust. Now, you would want a revocable living trust, unless you're a little bit more complicated, say. You might need something more than that, but you pretty much are going to want to make sure that you've got that covered. And remember that a trust does two things. It keeps you out of probate in death and conservatorship in life. So you've made sure that you've assigned people to make decisions for you when you can't make those decisions. And then in death, you've made sure that your money is going to get distributed and your property is going to get distributed the way that you wanted it to do. Now, if you don't have those things, then there's a very good chance you're going to go through a legal process called probate. And probate is a legal process by which they verify your will. If you don't have one, then they assign you one. Now, good news is that if you have beneficiary forms, all right, so if you have beneficiary forms on all of your accounts, and you've assigned primary and contingent beneficiary forms on your accounts, and you've done it correctly, then those assets will probably not go through probate. But depending on what state you live in, your other hard assets, cars, boats, motor homes, houses, so on and so forth, will end up going through probate. And that's somewhere between a 3 to 8% average of your gross estate value. And the question comes, do you want to pay that? But then we got to start looking at these other things, such as our qualified accounts. And what you need to understand is the worst possible money that you can pass on to your children is the qualified accounts. Because you see, you got a business partner, and his name is Uncle Sam. And he's going to get his pound of flesh. And the question is, how much of that flesh is he going to get? You see, because when you're passing money on with the qualified accounts, you don't get a step up in basis. So that means that all of that money that comes across comes with a bomb inside of it. But it can be even worse, because if you're subject to estate taxes, then not only are you going to give up a large portion, let's say for sake of argument, you're $1 million here, you're going to give up this much in income taxes, but then you're going to turn right around and you're going to give up this much or maybe even this much in estate taxes. And all of a sudden that which you worked your entire life for becomes a very small number. And this is simply because of poor planning. Because people don't plan to fail, they simply fail to plan. Now, if we wanted to go out and we wanted to figure out a better way to do this, and we were looking for the perfect investment, let's say we want the perfect investment. We want to make sure there was no risk in it. We had some guarantees. It was penalty free, and we had liquidity, use, and control. It was protected. We could leverage it. It was tax deferred. It was tax free. We could collateralize it. It was tax deductible when we put it in. It had disability benefits, and it transferred tax free. Now, do you know what that's called, folks? That's called the unicorn. It does not exist. There is nothing out there that does all of those things. But what if I told you that we could go out here and we could find something, okay, that does all but one of those things? And the only thing that we couldn't do out of there is we couldn't actually write off the money that we put in there. Now, there might be some penalties, but otherwise we could do that. If we could do that, in other words, if we could grow our money tax-free, access up to 85% at any time tax-free, put it back if you want, get most of the gains of the market, never participate in losses, and we died, it passed on to 2 to 3 times that amount tax-free, would you want to do something like that? I know I would. And the amount of money I would put in there is the absolute most they would let me. Now, the greatest thing about that is we're actually being able to go out and do all of those things and then still pass it on tax-free. And if we do our legacy planning correctly, we can even avoid estate taxes. So when we're talking about this legacy planning, and we're talking about what it is we're going to do in the future, one of the most important things that we want to figure out is we want to figure out what is the document that we have in place to ensure that every single thing that I want to have happen happens when I die the way I want it to happen. And in addition to that, am I setting my heirs up for a huge problem in the future? So in other words, do you have a relationship with someone in the government when you're dying to give them your money rather than keep it for yourself or your family? And if you don't, then it's probably serious time for you to start sitting down and start talking about your legacy planning, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, or 100. What have you done? What have you done to make sure that everything's going to go the way you want it to go? Now, remember to subscribe to our channel below. And remember to live like you're going to die tomorrow and plan like you're going to live forever, because you just might. And be sure to put some comments down here below. What have you done to make sure that your financial future and your family's financial future is secure? Keep smiling and make it a great day.